everybody. I'm Stephen Balto, and my topic is on the electric vehicle and the environment. And as we go through time, more and more CO2 is being emitted into the environment. And you may think, get an electric vehicle, cut down on that. But as I'm going to talk about in this argument, currently electric vehicles have substantial harmful environmental consequences. And my supporting claims are the manufacturing process of the electric vehicle's batteries is extremely harmful to the environment. The next thing is the electricity used to recharge the batteries in the electric vehicles is also generated from fossil fuels. And then my last supporting claim is recycling. After the electric vehicle is used up, the recycling of the batteries is also extremely harmful due to all the lead in products in it. So, manufacturing process of the electric vehicle and its batteries. First, a study by a low carbon vehicle partnership and the British government showed that 50% higher, that the manufacturing process of the batteries is 50% higher CO2 creates 50% higher CO2 emissions than just your average vehicle production. And then the next one is the CO2 emissions created to create just one of the batteries is 12.6 tons, and your average standard 12-volt car battery is only 5.6 tons. And that study was done, that claim was said by Ed Morris on hotair.com. Another part of the manufacturing process is the electric motor. The electric motor uses a ton of copper wires densely packed together to create the power to propel the vehicle forward. And copper is, the mining process of copper is extremely environmentally harmful due to all the chemicals that they must soak into massive piles that they have to drain it out, kind of like gold. And that leads me to the next thing, that all this manufacturing of the battery and the motor have created substantial amounts of environmental CO2 emissions. The next thing is during the life of the vehicle, every time the battery drains and you have to plug it in and recharge it, you have to plug it into your power source. And a study by the Energy Information Administration shows that 84% of the U.S. energy is obtained from fossil fuel sources. So what that's saying is pretty much every time you plug in something, you're probably getting that power to run it from some source of fossil fuel. And then the next thing that led me to is that how much does 1 kilowatt of power cost in emissions? And 1 kilowatt, 1.5 pounds of carbon dioxide are created for every kilowatt of power. And so I took this and I found out that an electric vehicle needs about 31 kilowatts of power to be fully charged. So it's emitting, so plugging it in and getting a full charge, you're creating 48.5 pounds of CO2 emissions. And a gallon of gasoline only emits 19.5 pounds of CO2 emissions, which is obviously more than a kilowatt of power. But an equal economy car that gets 40 miles to the gallon, like a Ford Fiesta, only needs 2.5 gallons of gas to go the same distance. And in those 2.5 gallons, you only have created 47.5 pounds of CO2 emissions. So you're about a half a pound less CO2 emissions using your gas. Then, because of the manufacturing process of the batteries, even though you're not actually emitting any CO2 emissions when you're driving the car, you would have to drive the car for approximately 80,000 miles before the consumption of gas in an average gas vehicle creates enough CO2 emissions to make up for the massive amounts of CO2 emissions that have been created during the electric vehicle process. And also, I found that there was a study done by Jason, and he took a truck and he ran it, and he measured the amount of hydrocarbons going into it and the amount of hydrocarbons coming out of it. And in this test, the truck was actually cleaning the air. There was less hydrocarbons coming out of it than there were going into it. And that's a combustion engine vehicle, so therefore you may be driving an electric vehicle not harming the environment, but you're also not cleaning it. And the last supporting part is that the recycling. After you're done driving this electric vehicle, you're going to be, well, what do I do with it now? So you ship it off to go be recycled. And the Science magazine did a test that smelting and recycling of the lead in these batteries will result in substantial release of lead into the environment. This is extremely harmful. And also by hotair.com, the disposal also produces double the emissions because of the energy consumed in recovering recycling materials in the battery. So you're also creating emissions there. And as a result of this, that is why I think that electric vehicles are extremely harmful to the environment, and gas vehicles are the way to go. So.
All right, you indicate the subject, and there's a little bit of controversy that's suggested at the beginning. Listen, I was paying attention, and I knew what your proposition was because we talked about it, and I've seen your outline. I'm not sure everybody else will have gotten that information in, from the opening section. If they work backwards, once you get to the preview, then they'll be able to figure it out. But like I said, that kind of requires them to do some backward engineering there, and you want to be clearer from the beginning. So make sure you highlight that that is, in fact, your proposition. Like, I know you said it, and I know that that's your proposition, but I'm not sure everybody else will have known it until they hear you start previewing, and they go, okay, now, what was it that came right before? So you want to be careful about that. I thought you did an okay job laying out the secondary points, but once you got to the body of the speech, you didn't keep them as claims, declarative statements. They became narrative sorts of things, and there's a lot of explanation that goes on. I got to rush a little bit because we've got one more speaker to get in. I do want to say that I thought the clearest part of your argument was the explanation about the comparison between the carbon dioxide that's being used by the electric vehicles and the gas mileage of the internal combustion engine. I thought you did a pretty good job on that. I think you say there's a break-even point at 80,000 miles, but I'm not sure why that occurs, so that was a little bit confusing. But I did think that you had some good information there, but sometimes it needs more context. It really felt occasionally like we're being dropped in on information here. And again, some of the same problems that I've mentioned to other people, it sounds like there are paraphrases and explanations instead of using direct quotes. Actually, the direct quotes sometimes will be a lot clearer than your own explanation. You think I'm explaining this pretty clearly, but it's not always as clear as you hope it would be. All right, we're going to stop here, and we've got one more speaker.